everyone, it's Misty, and I'm so excited this week to be joined by Fran Gulick of Cotton and Joy. We'll be teaching her beautiful Mimi's Lemons pattern. Fran, welcome.
Hi, Misty. Thank you so much for having me here today.
Oh, thank you so much for being here, being willing to use the magic of technology to get us in the same room together. I love that.
Yes.
So if you...
Even though I'm in Washington.
Exactly, and I'm in Missouri, we can make it work, which is pretty magical. So if you wouldn't mind giving people a little background into yourself and how you got started quilting and designing, that would be amazing.
Yeah. Hi, everybody. If you don't know me, I'm Fran Gulick of Cotton and Joy, and I got into quilting when I was pregnant with my oldest son. I guess nesting just kind of manifested in me, and I joined a wonderful group of ladies at Fort Bliss in Texas called the Blissful Stitchers, and they kind of took me under their wing and taught me how to sew. But I didn't really get really into quilting until I was after the birth of my second son. And at the time we were living in Germany, and I was going through some pretty bad postpartum depression. And I needed something that was sort of tangible. Like I did this and it didn't get torn apart.
Yes, it would still be there.
Like, yes, like because when you're a mom, you clean and then the kids wake up from the nap and it just gets torn apart.
Oh, I
needed something
totally
to have like, at the end of the day, that was like, I did this. Like, look, like it's here. And around the same time, I found Instagram and sort of the community of modern quilters on there, and I just kind of fell in love with the community and quilting. And at the time, I was working as a graphic designer, kind of on my own, and I guess the designer brain just kind of couldn't help itself, and I started thinking of my own like quilts that I wanted to make, and I would go online and I couldn't find them, and so then I had to look up how to write a pattern and the math involved, and then it just kind of took off from there.
I love that. That is amazing. And so the pattern we're making today is called Mimi's Lemons, and so I'm dying to know, who is Mimi? Can you tell us the story behind the name?
Yes. So it's in Spanish, so it's actually pronounced Memi, which is totally fine because everybody pronounces it Mimi.
That's perfect.
Memi was my grandmother. When I was young, my mom was a single mom, so we actually lived with my grandparents. And the house that we had, my grandmother, on the front yard, she had this beautiful lemon tree, and it was kind of like her pride and joy, this lemon tree. And I called her Memi because, I don't know, that's the nickname I came up with as a kid. And so this pattern is sort of like my ode to her. It's kind of my tribute to her, I guess I should say. It's her lemons that she loved, and she really had a big hand in raising me and kind of who I am today. So yeah, that's kind of the story behind the pattern.
That Memi. I'll get it correct going forward. I love that so much. Well, I've shared my connection with my grandma and how important she was to me growing up and to my journey into quilting as well. So I love that. I love that you've given a tribute to her. So let's dive in, and you can tell us how to make this, because I really, really enjoyed making it. It's a great pattern. And if it's your first time making curves, I think this is a great way to start because Fran has made it really beginner friendly. So let's dive right in.
Okay, so here's the pattern. Here's the quilt, and it's actually right behind me as well. And as Misty said, this is very beginner friendly because the curved pieces on them, as you can see, are kind of pretty big pieces. They're kind of bigger
gradual curves.
Yeah, and I think that's a mistake a lot of people make when they try curves the first time. When I talk with them in classes and things, they're like, well, I tried the smaller curve because I thought it would be easier. And I'm like, no, like the bigger the curve, the more gradual it's going to be, the easier it's going to be.
Exactly.
So that's kind of why I went with this bigger curve for this pattern. And then you don't need any sort of specialty templates. The pattern comes with 2 papers, actually 3, but it's in 2 pages.
Yeah.
And let me open it here. And as you can see here on the template, it has a dotted line, and that's kind of where you want to cut it. I know Misty made some pretty special plastic pieces?
I did, yeah. So here is my paper pieces that I cut out exactly from the pattern, from Fran's pattern. And the dashed line, like she said, that's where you cut. And then the solid line is what it will end up after you've sewn it together. And I was telling Fran, for some reason, when I'm cutting with paper pieces, I will cut through that template all day long. But I went ahead and made some out of just template plastic, which is just a little bit thicker. And don't get me wrong, a rotary cutter will absolutely still go through this, but it just seems to trick my brain and be a little bit easier to cut. So that's totally an option as well. I just traced it onto the template plastic and used that. So then should we show some cutting? Because some people are even nervous cutting curves. So we can do that as well.
Absolutely. And one thing I wanted to mention, if you do have a smaller rotary cutter, like the 28 millimeter, that makes cutting curves a lot easier than the big 45 one. They're not super expensive. I know not everybody has them, but they make the cutting curves much easier, and I think they're totally worth it.
That's a good tip, because I actually don't have a small rotary cutter. I only have, my regular 45 and then the jumbo cutter. But I think it's important to note that if you don't have one, it's still totally possible, because I cut all of mine with this.
Oh, yeah.
And you can totally do it.
My first quilt, which is this one right here, I cut with this one, and then somebody was like, have you tried the smaller ones? And I was like, I thought those were for playing. I don't. Well, I was like, why do people buy the smaller ones? And then I cut my first curve.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, okay, that's why people make the smaller ones.
That's so funny. I know a lot of people use them for applique shapes and things like that, but it makes sense. You have more curves on applique, so it would work for this as well. So let's go ahead and cut a few pieces. So this is really fun because most of this is designed. All of the lemons and the leaves are made to use 5-inch squares. So if you have pre-cuts lying around, this is totally pre-cut friendly, which is awesome.
This one right here was done with pre-cuts.
I love that with this. It's a little scrappy. It's so fun. And so for the quilt that I made, I used the throw size in Fran's pattern. You can see it behind me here. And we used these beautiful gelato ombres by Maywood Studio. And so you get this full gradient in color in both the yellow and the green, which just gives you that scrappy look without having to buy a bunch of different fabrics, which I really like in the ombres. So I just cut 5-inch strips and subcut those into 5-inch squares. And then for our yellow, we are going to use that A template. And so I'm going to use my template plastic. And you can see it can just sit right on there. And then you can just gently cut that curve. Just like so. And then you're done. It is that simple. And so then to go along with this inner curve, you also need template C. And what did you call this, Fran? You called it the arc? Is that
the arch?
The arch.
Yeah,
okay.
It looks like an arch.
Yeah, I love that.
Look at it.
That's perfect. And so then she recommended, I think you said you cut these 5 1/4 by, is it 6 1/2 for your?
Yeah, 6 1/2. So then they kind of nest together when you're cutting them, and there's less wasted fabric than if you were just cutting each piece.
Each one
individually. 5 1/4. Yeah.
That's a great tip. And so I'll use the paper template here just so you can see. You can use it either way. And so I have my rectangles here, and we're just going to carefully cut out our arch shape. And just keep your fingers out of the way.
Yes, that's the most important thing.
Absolutely. So there, I had 2 stacked together, so I have 2 there, and then we can just flip this around, and then this fits perfectly on the opposite side. And so then you just have the waist in the middle here. It's very minimal. Just like so. Ta-da! All right, so now we have some arches. We cut one of our yellow drunkard's path shapes. And then now, Fran, how do we get ready to stitch these together?
Okay. Okay, so when we're getting ready to sew these pieces together, the first thing you want to do is take your drunkard's path or quarter circle, whatever you want to call them, and then fold them so that the straight edges meet. Okay. And then you make a crease right at the center of that curve.
Just kind of
and
finger
then
press.
You'll do the Yes, just finger press.
Perfect.
Usually when I'm making like a full throw size, I'll have like my iron and just kind of like press a bunch of them together at the same time. Yeah.
That's a great tip.
And then you'll want to do the same thing with your arch. So have the straight edges meet and the ends, and then finger press that curve right at the center.
Okay.
And we're going to be using that so that you're going to lay your pieces together and meet them right at the crease.
Okay.
And I know this looks a little funky. And the way I always tell people is it looks kind of like a deer when you look at it
like
this way.
The antlers.
Yes. So you want to make a little deer with your two pieces and pin them right at the center.
Okay.
And then I was telling...
you're good. I was going to ask how you pin it. Like, do you pin like closer to where the seam line will be, or do you pin farther back?
I do right kind of like right at like at the edge.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. And then once you have your little deer all pinned together, and I was telling Misty, I've found there's lots of different ways that people do the curves. Mm-hmm. Some people pin with lots of pins, and other people don't use any pins, and other people use glue. I found I'm kind of like a minimal pinner. I teach this with 3 pins, but I've gotten to the point where I only use this pin. But if you've never done curves before, you want to use this middle pin and then do one at the very beginning. And this is when things start looking a little funky, and it's okay. It'll work out.
But you're just going to match that corner, right? You just want to line those.
Yes, you match it so it's kind of like the straight edges, kind of like I have here. They meet together, and then you'll do the same thing with the other end.
So just like that and like this. So let's go ahead and pin these 3 so you can see what we're talking about if this is your first time. And I will put one more pin over here. And then we can take this to the machine, right?
Yes.
Okay. So then, do you put your curved piece up or down, like the white piece?
I always put the white piece up. I find that makes it a lot easier to sew the curve if you have the arch on the top.
I agree. I feel the same way. I have heard arguments for both, and I was just curious which way you opted to go with.
Yes, I've seen both, but my brain just wants that white piece on the top.
I know, me too. I feel like I need to be able to maneuver that one a little bit more, and I feel more in control when it's on top. So we have...
Yeah, I think that's what it comes down to for me as well. I want to be able to kind of maneuver it a bit, and you can't really do that when it's at the bottom.
Totally. All right, so then let's start stitching. So I'm just going to take a few little stitches before I get to that pin, and then I can now kind of pull this out of the way. And then I just kind of stretch my fabric because it is cut on a curve. We've got quite a bit of bias with this piece, which is our friend in this case. And so I just kind of make the fabric line up and then continue with a 1/4 inch seam all the way around.
Yeah, that's exactly what I do as well. Just sew a couple stitches, then kind of stretch the bottom so it's kind of flat on my machine, and then I maneuver the top so they meet, the edges meet.
Exactly. And just never want to sew over those pins. Just take your time and pull those out before you get to your needle. Here we go. We are almost there. Last few stitches here. I think what's important to remember with this is you really do have to take your time. At least I do. Like, it is not as fast as normal piecing for me, but that's okay, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's part of the fun. But then you can see, while it's under the machine, it's all rumpled and looks kind of silly, and then it naturally just wants to roll back. And so that's, yeah, so then
it just wants to do that. So then for pressing, I always tell people, just do what the fabric wants to do at this point and press it towards the white.
Exactly. Which I know for some of us, when we hear press to the dark side all the time, with curves, that's just not always the case. You just do the best you can. So then from here, Fran, what comes next?
Okay, so then you have this piece, and this is when people just kind of go, "Oh my God, it works!" And I'm like,
Yes.
"Yes, it does."
Yes,
You really can
absolutely.
see curves.
It's,
Um, and then you'll notice this is a little bigger than 5 inches, and that's because this arch piece, when I designed this pattern, I made it a little bigger on purpose, and that's because we're not perfect, and sometimes there's just puckers, and it makes this edge kind of little not completely straight,
a
and
little
that's
wonky.
completely fine.
Yep.
A little wonky, a little wiggle room. So then at this point, we need to trim this piece
Okay.
down to 5 inches. You'll see this is a little smaller. And the main thing you need to remember when trimming is to leave a 1/4 inch seam allowance here on the white,
side.
on the background piece.
Yeah,
Yes.
so you can see here, I just want to make sure I have it a 1/4 inch hanging past on my ruler, which I do. This works out just perfect. So I'm just going to trim this up to 5 inches, just like so. We've got this great little 1/4 circle block ready to go, which is awesome. So then now for the leaf, it's essentially the same thing, right? We're just moving on and adding another, right? Am I right?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes, they're the same exact curve. So I know it kind of scares people because you don't have like a straight edge at any point with this piece.
Yeah.
But it's the same exact steps. You just fold your little leaf in half.
Okay.
Finger press it. Then you take your arch piece, your first one, finger press it, and then you once again pin them.
Okay.
And it's a little scary the first time. And once again, you make your little deer.
Yeah.
With the little antlers. And then it doesn't seem like they would match up here, but as you can see, they do match up kind of at the edge of the leaf.
Okay.
So then you can pin that at the beginning, at the end.
Perfect. I will go ahead and add that, and then we'll go ahead and stitch this one as well, so you guys can see that it works just in the same way. I think it's really fun. Like these types of projects, at least for me on my quilting journey, were so satisfying because it's truly something that I just never thought I would do. I didn't think I would ever enjoy sewing curves.
Yeah.
And now
Yes.
so many of my favorite patterns to make have curved piecing in them. And I love that. I think it just goes to show that even if you're not on the part of your journey where curves feel doable, like don't give up, because it could be you in a year or in a month. You just never know. So.
Oh, completely. Yeah. And like I said, this kind of the bigger the curve, the easier it's going to be.
Yes,
so,
absolutely.
Don't be afraid of those curved pieces. I always tell people, and they always look at me like, "Oh, I don't know. You're just saying that." And I'm like, "No, you really can do it.
You can do it. You totally can."
Yeah. It's not as hard as we make it out in our brains to be.
That's exactly right. And like I had built up this fear in my mind and hadn't even tried for so long because I was afraid of it. And like I said,
me too.
Now it's become one of my favorite things. So all of you who are watching that haven't given it a shot yet, let this be your day. You can totally do it.
Yeah. Yeah, and that was me when I was designing this pattern. I was like, oh, I don't know, this has curves. Like, maybe I should try to make it without curves. Well, and one of my friends was like, you should just try it. Just try it for one curve. And I'm like, okay, I can do one curve.
You totally
and then it came out. And then I did the next one, and then I had a limit. And I was like,
you did it. You did
I have to do this now.
I love it. So we've got that first side done. It looks great. And so then now on this, do you just go ahead and add the other side, or?
I trim at this point.
You trim
and it's
here.
Gonna be, yes. And you just line up the like 5-inch and 5-inch and then have the
1/4 inch over.
1/4 inch seam allowance.
Okay. Yeah. So let's do that then. So I've got my. And
the reason you trim again is because you'll need to line up the next arch with that new straight edge.
So it has to fit against that. I see what you're saying.
Yes.
Okay. So I'm just looking here. Here's the edge of my leaf. This is my 1/4 inch line here, my 1/4 inch line here, and you can see I've got enough to trim this off and have it be nice and square. So I'm just gonna cut off these two sides, just like so, and now we can add our other curve. So just like Fran has taught us, I'm gonna finger press here. So I have that center curve on the other side, and we will press this one. Whoops, make sure that's straight. There we go. And then line these up into our little deer. I will never forget that now, Fran. I love that so much.
Yeah, somebody said that during one of my class. They're like, oh, it looks like a deer. And I'm like, yes, it does.
It
That's
totally
what we'll call it
does. Yep. That's perfect. All right. So then I am going to just start. I'm only going to use that center pin and be brave.
Oh, dear.
Oh, dear, indeed.
Yeah, no, that's how I do it as well now. I guess I'm just at the point where I've sewn so many of these that I can just use that middle pin, and I find that a lot easier.
Yeah, I agree. As I've done a few, I have gotten really comfortable, and it works great. And so I just kind of start and then get to the halfway point, and then the same idea, I'm just going to pull this end piece around.
Yes.
And match it up with my finger. And so I'm just going to hold this down here with my finger and then just let this curve do its magic under the presser foot and line it up as I go with my other hand.
Yeah, and you just kind of slowly
take your time, readjust.
Move it over so then it's just kind of straight.
There we go. Lovely. And now we can press this one.
Yes.
Look at that. I never get tired of it. Every time I'm shocked that it works.
I know, me too. Like, how did this happen?
It's so magical. All right, and so then we're just going to trim this again to our 5 inches.
Yes, and sometimes that will happen to where you need to retrim the first side.
I was just going to ask that because I can see this is a little bit wonky, but I still have plenty of room to trim. So
yes,
I'm
you'll
glad.
have plenty of room, and it's just a little extra step, but then it makes the quilt come together very nicely.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's trim these 2 sides here, and then I am going to rotate this just so that this other side will be nice and square. Just like so. Look at that. Lovely 5-inch square block. Okay, so now we have our components made. We've learned how to make the curves for the lemon and the leaves. And so now it's all in the layout, right? So we have a couple of our curves that go together like this, and then our solid 5-inch yellow squares. And then when we sew those together, that will make our lemon. And then Fran, you had a great call out about the leaves. So let's talk a little bit about that.
So I have here my little board. The leaves will face in 2 different directions.
Okay.
It's kind of the left side and the right side, and it's just kind of how it fits with the lemon.
Okay.
The lemon itself, you are able to kind of twist and turn to make it fit with the leaves. But the leaves you cannot. So it just kind of depends on how they're facing in comparison to the white square.
Yeah, I see. So like here, you know, this would be the same way I've got here, right? And so then in the other way, can I see your cheat sheet again?
Oh, yes.
There we go. So is mine must be flipped. I don't know what I've done, but it doesn't look like yours. But it looks like my lemon's on the quilt.
So that looks right. Yes.
It does look right? Okay. And so then the other one would go like this, I think. So then the lemon would actually need to rotate. Is that right?
Yes. So it's on the pattern.
Okay.
If I show you right here. So because you have the right facing and the left facing, and it's just which way the leaf, how it's facing.
Oh, I see. Perfect. Okay. That's great.
And it just adds a little movement to the quilt when it's all done. So they're not all exactly the same.
I love that, yeah. It does. It looks like the lemons are just rolled out on the grass waiting for you on a beautiful summer day. It's so, so bright and happy and fun. Well, thank you so much, Fran, for being here and for sharing a little bit of the story behind this pattern and being willing to share it with everyone here on At Home with Misty. I really appreciate it. So can you tell everybody again where they can find you if they want to follow along?
Yeah, thank you so much for having me. It's been so much fun talking to you, and I love meeting you. and I hope to meet you again.
Yes, for sure.
And then you can find me on my website, cottonandjoy.com, and then I'm also on Instagram, cottonandjoy, and then seldom randomly on TikTok when I feel like it.
I love that. Me too. Me too. Thank you so much, Fran. Again, I hope we get to do more together in the future, and be sure to check out more of the great patterns that she has available. There are so many wonderful ones. You won't want to miss them, and we will see you next time on At Home with Misty. Hey everyone, it's Misty. Thanks for watching At Home. If you aren't already a part of our Missouri Star family, be sure to subscribe and hit the bell if you want a notification every time we release a new video. I'll see you next Monday on the newest episode of At Home.